Johnny Wharff with another Marietta High School Athletic Hall of Fame Spotlight, and we are spotlighting Chuck Mooney, class of 1959. Let me first congratulate you, Mr. Mooney, on this upcoming induction, and tell our listeners where you are right now, in your life, what you're doing, and where your feet are.
Very good, John. I appreciate it, and I definitely appreciate the chance to talk to you. We're currently in Fort Worth, Texas. Jane and I and our three sons moved to Fort Worth from Marietta back in 1980 when business went south, and made our life down here. Two of our three sons ended up playing at TCU on the football team, and we have 10 grandchildren, all of them great athletes, of course, and just enjoying Texas. Miss Marietta a bunch, but enjoying Texas.
All right. Well, that'll kind of lead me. I guess we'll do this a little backwards, if you don't mind, and that is that I'm interested in the different avenues, after Marietta High School, on to Ohio State, and talk a little bit about that avenue that got you to where you are now.
Certainly. Had great sessions with Coach Woody Hayes. He visited Marietta several times when I was a senior. A lot of in-home visits. He enjoyed my mother's home cooking. He made me promise at that time, if I decided to go to any of the schools I was visiting, that I would stay in Ohio and not go to that school up north, meaning Michigan, of course.
Oh, we know what that is.
Yep, and I only spent 2 years at Ohio State. Had a great freshman and sophomore year. I remember my first game getting in as a sophomore was against Indiana, and it was a timeout when they put me in, and I ran out to the huddle, and I looked up, and it felt like I was in the bottom of a funnel. It was just an awesome experience. Had some great games, and in fact, this would have been 1960 class, and after one of the games, Coach Bo Schembeckler, that went on to Michigan, pulled the group together, and most people will recognize the helmet decals that are currently used, but back then that was before decals, and Bo pulled a few of us together and handed us what looked like a handmade, almost like a hatchet or an Indian tomahawk, and he called us at that. Since we were such a disruptive force on defense, he called us the Hatchet Squad, and hence the start of the helmet decals. Had a pretty serious knee injury toward the end of the year, and grades faltered, and I dropped out and joined the Marine Corps and spent 4 glorious years in there during the Kennedy blockade of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and on to MAG-16 Air Wing, and spent some time in that nasty place. It brings back some memories, so I apologize. But came back to Marietta and courted my sweetheart at that time, 6 years, my junior, Jane Archer, and we ended up getting married and progressed from there. Yeah.
Fantastic, great storyline, and we're going to come back after a quick time out here and talk about Marietta specific, and a football captain and an outstanding trackman with Marietta High School back in the class of 1959, and prior to that with Chuck Mooney in the 2019 Hall of Fame banquet coming up Saturday, the 19th of October here in Marietta, and Mr. Mooney will be in town for that. We'll be back with a few more thoughts from him after this timeout. Johnny Wharff, along with Chuck Mooney, and our Hall of Fame spotlight for the Marietta High School Athletic Hall of Fame upcoming banquet Saturday, October the 10th, and honored on the high school football field, the inductees on the Friday night, October 18th. And Charles Chuck Mooney, let's jump back to the late 50s in Marietta High School and talk about it. I'm going to guess that your coach at the time was Scotty Hamilton?
Yes, sir, it sure was. Scotty, what a terrific guy. If I could back up a little, John, to go to Willard Grade School, and my very first coach was Buck Forshee.
Oh, wow.
And Warren Emmel. But when I was in the 5th grade, Buck called a meeting, and he obviously knew of my family background. I was the oldest of 6, living down on South Meg Street, next to the Offenbergers, my cousins, by the way. But at that time, on Meg Street, that was before we had inside plumbing, and Buck Forshee sold me on Willard Sports by telling me that I could take a shower every day in the locker room. So that started me on sports, and it was almost addictive. I just absolutely loved football. I enjoyed track. Bob Anderson, Coach Scotty Hamilton was just a miracle worker with us guys. I remember the Newark game, the 58 season, when they were 5th ranked in the state, and we went up there unknowns and managed to defeat them 14-0 on their turf. In fact, after the game, I don't know what even made me do it, but I went into the Newark locker room after that defeat and met with a guy that would be my future teammate at Ohio State. His name was Gene Knight, and we had pulverized each other all evening. But it was a great game, and that was the first time that people like Neil Gregory and Jim Farley and the younger crew got a real taste of a good victory. It was amazing. Bob Anderson's, Coach Anderson was my shop teacher and convinced me to come out and try the throwing events and track. Just a terrific experience. I ended up being the top point man my senior year, and was awarded the Whittick and Van Fran Award for the outstanding senior trackman. Was captain, elected captain on the football team and the track team. Made all COL and I was elected 3rd team all state with just a great class. So I don't know. All in all, a terrific experience. Just love every minute of it, John.
You still run the 100-yard dash, or?
Actually, it's funny you ask. I still do compete in the Senior Olympic Games. I compete in all the field events, shot put, discus, the javelin, and the hammer. In fact, 3 years ago, I qualified for the national meet in the hammer. It's a fun experience, but I popped a bicep tendon and destroyed my rotator cuff last April getting ready, and I'm just now coming off of shoulder surgery three weeks ago. So
yeah, somehow I'm not surprised to hear all this from Charles Chuck Mooney, class of 1959, Marietta High School, and inductee into the 2019 Marietta High School Athletic Hall of Fame. It is not just a pleasure, but an honor to have this time with you. We look forward to seeing you here coming up in middle of October.
Well, thank you, John, and I definitely appreciate your time and everything that you folks do. So go Tigers.